If throughout the course of this pandemic you felt like you don't know what information to trust, whether or not mainstream media is telling the truth or whether independent media has the truth or somewhere in between, the reality of the situation, you would not be alone in feeling that. Most people have been feeling, I don't know what to believe anymore. I don't know what the truth is. Is the World Health Organization telling me the truth? Is the CDC? Or is my government? Is my health authorities? Whatever it might be, people have been having a hard time believing something. And the reality of the situation is a lot of what has been proposed by mainstream media has very much been coverage that just follows along with whatever governments or whatever, governmental authority figures are putting forth in terms of information about COVID. Whereas on the alternative or independent media side of things, for the most part, there's a lot more wide-ranging perspectives, seeking ideas from other experts, seeking opinions and seeking different studies and so forth that come from alternative perspectives on what's going on with COVID, some that overlap a lot with the mainstream narrative and some that, overlap only slightly. Of course, there's also some that are completely different. The reality of the situation is now people are starting to have such a mistrust in mainstream media because the facts that they're portraying don't seem to match the reality that's playing out in the real world. On top of that, you're now starting to have a lot of mainstream media ex-employees or people who have been inside the mainstream media for quite some time come out and say, guys, over the last little bit, there's been so many issues going on with mainstream media with regards to COVID coverage that it's starting to get a little bit tricky to follow what exactly is going on. One of those people is Anita Krishna. She's the former control room director at Global News. She was recently at a protest in Vancouver with regards to vaccine mandates. Let's have a look at what she said.
All you people here today, all of what you're seeing here, this is not going to happen tonight on the 6 o'clock news, is it? You will not see yourself. You will not see how patriotic and beautiful and how you're waving all the right flags that I can see. You will not see yourself on the news tonight. And do you know how I know that? It's because I directed the news for 20 years over there. And we were good people. Back in the day, we were good people. None of the people that I worked with they're not. They're hard-working people. They do an excellent job at putting TV on the air. I don't know what the hell happened, though, in 2020. Everything changed. I kept my mouth shut, right?
This is Anita.
For most of 2020, because if you ever spoke up, you got into trouble, right? But as soon as I started to speak up, that's when I got suspended. And the reason that I got suspended is because I went to the rally with Mel Boucher. And I wanted to find out something about those miscarriages. Are they happening or are they not happening? I have no idea. But why did a doctor get locked up for saying that there are miscarriages? Why is the news not even covering any of this? The most misinformation that has ever been spread in the past 2 years has come from mainstream media. We have spread so much misinformation that my heart is broken.
Now, I do want to point out that, one of the key things that she brought up here, which is something we've been talking about for a very long time as well, is this concept that everybody inside mainstream media is not somehow evil or part of an agenda or knows exactly what's going on. A lot of times there is a culture people get stuck in. They get stuck in an echo chamber, or their boss is telling them, don't bother looking into that story. It's just not important. A lot of people sit around in, newsroom meetings and they pitch stories and they pitch ideas. And if you're that one person that's going against the narrative, you're going to be held in place by those that are just going to kind of say, nah, probably not a good idea. And then over the course of time, it just becomes, I'm just not going to say it because I'm the only one thinking differently. This is oftentimes what happens and how journalists regulate each other and how they just avoid talking about certain ideas. We had a number of conversations with Evan Solomon, who's one of the key personalities here in Canada for CTV News when it comes to news coverage. And talking to the guy, I can tell you one-on-one talking with him, he had a lot of talking points that as soon as you ask him something and kind of push a little deeper, he doesn't know what to say. He doesn't know where to go. He very much talks like a politician. My own assessment of, speaking with him is I would say he's not really that informed on a lot of perspectives around what's happening with COVID-19. He has all of the classic cultural talking points that comes out of mainstream media that they believe are comebacks to various questions or various concerns that people bring up with regards to many things inside the COVID narrative. And we're not going to dive too deep on those specifics right now, but the reality of the situation is it feels like, when I was talking to him, it feels like I'm talking to a politician. I'm talking to somebody that you ask a good question and they go, I'm going to deflect, I'm going to divert, I'm just going to kind of weasel around so I don't really have to directly answer the question. This is a lot of what's been going on there. Another individual, British broadcasting executive by the name of Mark Sharman, he's a former director of ITV's network and regional news. He's also come out saying there's something seriously wrong going on inside mainstream media right now. Have a listen.
I know from individual stories that there are people in ITV regions who have been told, do not bring to us any stories to do with vaccine injuries. In fact, I think one person got threatened with losing their job. But I know in newspapers, people have tried to correct copy, they've tried to balance it out, and they've been pulled back by bosses. And I know that you yourself pitched a story with a widow of someone that died from after having an injection. So she was told by doctors. I don't think they ever had the inquest yet, but that story was pitched to This Morning. Didn't want to know. I've personally tried to get a couple of articles away that I've written. Didn't get them away anywhere. And there was a doctor who wrote a very good article about why the NHS doesn't need to keep vaccinating its staff. Went around most of the national papers, didn't get picked up. We've got no appetite for it, was one thing back. So yeah, listen, I think our industry, our trade, actually, as I prefer to call it, is guilty, because I think there are a lot of journalists within these organisations who know it's wrong and aren't speaking up. But equally, there are a lot of medics who also know it's wrong, who also aren't speaking up. Why? Don't know. Fear of losing their job, fear of putting their head above the parapet. I'm not sure, but the people are there.
So one of the key takeaway points here is, a lot of people watching this channel already watch this channel because they've been disenfranchised with what's going on in mainstream media. But there are a lot of people who believe a lot of what mainstream media says wholeheartedly, and they don't question it. They don't consider, hey, what else might be possible? Not only that, but there's also an issue with, the way age impacts the way we trust media. So a lot of younger people today have been born, like for example, myself, I'm 34 years old. I've never seen a moment in time, I have no reason to think that I should trust mainstream media because I have not lived through an era where I've had any reason to actually trust them. I've typically, when I became interested in covering news and media, I was in my late teens, early 20s, and could already see a lot of issues with the way the media was told, with looking at different perspectives and seeing, hey, why are there so many different perspectives? I have no reason to trust mainstream news. Whereas with people that might be from older generations, they look at it and they say, well, there was a long time we didn't even have internet. And there was just different perspectives being thrown around inside mainstream media. The alternative media was never that big. So oftentimes, people from older generations don't understand why younger people have such a massive distrust in media. And it's something where they can't relate to one another. But I hope that with more and more people coming out and talking like this, we can ask ourselves the question, what is it going to take for us to be open to a new perspective, to us to be open to other sources of information? What is it going to take if we're still just consuming mainstream media? What is it going to take for us to say, you know what, I'm going to spend, at least a certain amount of time every day or every week, whatever it might be, just gathering a different perspective that doesn't come from a legacy media source? What more proof do we need that it is time for us to start saying there's something wrong in mainstream media? The people that are used to work there are coming out and they're saying, look, there's a serious issue here. Common sense should tell us, if we take a few moments and look at other perspectives, that there's also something going on. So this is just a reflection point. Maybe this is a video you can send to friends and family and just have that discussion. What is it going to take for you to consider the possibility that there is something seriously wrong inside mainstream media right now, and it's time to expand our perspectives. It doesn't mean we have to believe everything we hear in independent media. It just means we have to consider that something is seriously afoot inside mainstream media, something is wrong, and that we have to start to look at other perspectives.